And we are live. Everybody, welcome to Unity TV. This is our first episode for everything to do with health, fitness, and all the in-between. I'm really excited to have Rad, my brother and business partner, with me today, and we are going to interview him and find out a little bit about his story into the health and fitness industry. Super pumped to welcome him to the show.
Hey guys, here we are, our first live TV. So looking forward to it. Let's see what's going to come out. Apparently I'm getting interviewed today, so I don't know what's really going to happen. So over to you, Yanni.
Awesome, mate. This is probably a pretty big, I guess, a milestone for us because we've been wanting to do this for quite a long time. First, I want to start off by sharing a bit about your journey, like what led you to take a step into the fitness industry. Because, quite frankly, this is easy for me because I know you, and we started out when we were about 4 and 6 years old doing judo in the country. Mm-hmm. But let's start with your journey, man. What happened?
Yeah, well, so we grew up in the bush in Kalang, up near Coffs Harbour, which is near a town, a city called Bellingen, and we were, we didn't have technology out there, so we used to run around and play and do whatever we did. And the first sort of classes we ever really did were judo. That was where we started, got our first taste of martial arts, and we both got really hooked on that. So obviously we did martial arts right through our childhood, all the different things like taekwondo and karate, a couple of different styles of karate. But it wasn't until I guess when I was 12 or 13, that was when I started rollerblading, and I got right into that. And when I was 17 is when I considered that I really started training properly, because that's when we started kickboxing together, and we did kickboxing together for a little while before I started Kung Fu. And I think I would have been 19 when I started Wing Chun, and I went on to doing that Wing Chun instructor's course, or maybe I was 18. So I did that Wing Chun instructor's course with Jim Fung's Wing Chun Academy for 2 years, and I kept doing Wing Chun maybe for another 6 months after that, before I started Wushu, and that was when I really got my taste for martial arts that I loved. I loved Wushu, I loved the movement in it, I loved all the jumps and the kicks and the flexibility and the acrobatic element to it. And it led me to wanting to be a stuntman, and wanting to be a stuntman, I guess, was kind of like a natural evolution for me, because I was just addicted to Kung Fu movies. And I remember you used to go crazy the amount of times that I made you watch Jackie Chan movies and Jet Li movies.
Oh my God, so many Jackie Chan and Jet Li movies growing up, my God.
Yeah, and that was what really, I think if we go back a step, that was what led me to Kung Fu, because Dad introduced us to Jackie Chan when I think I was about 12 or 13. And so we were watching Jackie Chan movies before we started doing martial arts. I remember that. There was a time when you actually used to enjoy them as well, before I made you watch them all for the 100th time. And
This is true.
And so yeah, I was, at the young age of 19 or 20, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. The only thing I knew I loved was martial arts and martial arts movies. So I thought I want to be a stuntman and do those kind of movies. And so I got that job at Fox Studios. I was lucky enough, I think there was 10,000 people that auditioned for that job in the backlot of Fox Studios, and they hired about 100 of us. So I was really lucky there. That was really cool. That was a dream job at that age, because I was getting paid to go to work and do stunts and just jump around and learn with all these amazing people. I was working with actors and acrobats and professional clowns and dancers and all these people from different movement disciplines. And I learnt a lot there, worked with some professional stuntmen, which was really cool. And that was when I sustained my first real life-changing injury. And that injury, that was a turning point for me, which definitely led me to where we are now, because up until that point, I really believed that my career was going to be in stunts. So I tore the Liz Frank ligament doing an acrobatic movement, and that's a ligament in the foot that holds the big toe onto the second toe. It was a life-changing injury. I had to get surgery, and set me onto a different path, because I had to stop doing stunts and pursuing that, at least in the short term. And I got jobs in bottle shops and just things that I didn't really enjoy at all. Until one day you and I decided that we were going to become personal trainers because it was the only thing that we both really, the only thing that we'd ever both really done consistently in our life was movement, some type of movement, and I couldn't think of a different way to make money in that respect consistently, which was funny for me because I hated gyms. If you remember, I used to hate weightlifting and everything. But anyway, that led us to where we are now, and here we are, being personal trainers, owning Unity Gym.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a big. When I think back about it, it's been an epic journey of monumental scale. So it's something that I think there's a lot we could share about in that and make a whole show out of just the journey of starting Unity. What was your favourite Jackie Chan movie of all time?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer. I really liked some of the scenes from Project A. Really stood out to me. There's those scenes. Remember when he's riding down the back streets? I saw that slapstick stuff where he's riding on the push bike and he slaps on the guys' doors and they open the door and that smacks the bad guys that are following him, and just some of the awesome stunts that he did. And then it finished with that great scene with Sammo Hung and him in the restaurant where they fight all those guys, and it just had some of the most crazy stunts, that one. Some of his, definitely it's his earlier stuff. I liked his earlier stuff and his Hong Kong films way more than his American films.
Yeah.
I think all of his American films, to be honest, are quite forgettable. They're good for their comedic value, like Shanghai Noon was really good with Owen Wilson, and what was that one with Chris Tucker? Rush Hour.
Rush Hour, yeah.
They were really funny, but in terms of action, definitely his Hong Kong films and the earlier ones are way better.
Yeah, cool. It's funny, I don't remember a lot of the really old ones. The only one I remember.
It's funny, I made you watch them so many times.
Yeah,
so.
I know. The one where he jumped off that wall onto that tree.
Yeah, that was the Armour of God.
Armour of God. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Excuse me. So let's talk more about your military experience. Let's share a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure.
'Cause I know that's something that you don't talk about that often, and most ex-ADF don't really like to talk about ADF that much usually, because it's not something they want to big up. But give us some history there. Like, why did you join the army at such a late age? You were 30 years old when you
30,
enlisted.
yeah. My enlistment date was 4 days after my 30th birthday. So we'd been personal trainers. I think we started personal training when I was 26, I think. So I did a couple of years at Fitness First, and then I did a couple of years outdoors, and I wasn't getting the success in personal training that I wanted. And when I reflect back on it now, the reason why I wasn't is because I wasn't living the life that I was preaching. I just wasn't doing the work that was required to become a successful trainer. And I really saw it as just a way that I could make money and still do Kung Fu a lot. So I was putting all my effort into Kung Fu, and I wasn't really learning about, how you really use gym equipment and how you train people effectively for fat loss or building muscle or, recovering from injury, and, the main reasons why people come to a gym. So the other thing as well is that I just couldn't seem to shake my terrible party habits that I'd developed throughout our teenage years and 20s. And, I was, taking drugs on the weekend, and I was just living a double life. And I remember I was speaking to Mum one day, and Mum said to me, she just said really gently, she said, "Rad, live the life that you preach." And that really stuck to me. It really just made me think, and I thought there was just no way that I could put my hand on my heart and say that I was living the life that I was preaching to people. And so I had this real epiphany, because I was 29 and I was thinking about where my life was as opposed to where I thought it would be when I was 19, and I thought, what was I going to achieve in the next 10 years? And it just didn't, I wasn't anywhere near there. So I had this epiphany that I needed a change, and the best change that I could think of was to join the military. I thought that was going to give me the discipline and the drive that I needed in life. And so, I joined the infantry as an infantry soldier. I joined, my enlistment date was 4 days after my 30th birthday. And I was in there for the next 4 years. It was without a doubt the most life-changing experience I've ever had. It's full on being in the army, and especially being 30, because you join with a whole bunch of guys that are 17, 18, 19. And Richard, our business partner, one of my best friends, I met him in the army. He was 19 when I met him, and I was 30. So that's really big, and you just get stripped down as a human being. You know, the first thing they do is they strip you of all your human rights and they turn you into a soldier. So you're just a yes sir, no sir person. And I did all my basic training for 6 months, and then they shipped me off to. Then we did 6 months of pre-deployment training, and then we went off to East Timor. I was in East Timor for 9 months, just shy of 9 months. I think 8 months and 3 weeks. Then I did a year back, they call it a battalion year, where you do a whole bunch of really grueling exercises, like going out in the bush for 30 days at a time with no showers and just a whole bunch of horrendous stuff. And then I went to East Timor again for a short stint, spent a bit more time back in the battalion. And, I went to Papua New Guinea as well on a training exercise. Then I got out after 4 years and came back and opened Unity Gym with you.
And it was an epic transformation. I can vouch for that. When Rad went away to when he came back was a different person. Now, I know that you have mixed feelings about, the army and that sort of thing and your experiences, but would you be able to confidently say that it is a good move for someone who needs to sort themselves out a little bit?
No, absolutely not. I definitely couldn't confidently say that. I feel pretty strongly about this because I saw the army do one of the best things in my life for me that I'd ever that I'd ever experienced. It really helped me, but I also saw it really mess up a lot of people. And I think that when you go in the army with a really clear vision on what it is that you want to get out of it, and you have a strong character, in a sense that other people's opinions will not waver yours very easily. So Richard was one of the few people that I was in the army with that was like that. A couple of my friends that I recently caught up with on Anzac Day, Shiva and Lil, they are some other guys that had a strong character that I believe that weren't wavered. But for the majority of them, I believe that the army was very detrimental to their development. When you're at such a young age, you're not even really a man yet. You're turning into a man, and when you're at that age as a man, you're looking for role models and you look for people to emulate.
Yeah.
And what do? They look for the more senior soldiers, the guys that are corporals and lance corporals who are only really 4 or 5 years older than them, still younger than I was when I joined, and they look for them for guidance. But the problem is that those guys joined when they were 17 or 18, and they looked for the same people. So you have this, sort of tradition where these boys are becoming men by looking at men in the army for guidance, and I don't think that is a positive force in people's lives at all. So I think, to go back to your question, I think the majority of guys that join the army, I don't believe that it did a lot of really good stuff for them. I see the stuff that they post on social media now and the kinds of things that they talk about, and it's pretty full on. They've got some pretty horrible views on the world, and
Yeah, fair enough. It's something that you always wonder. My story, I wanted to join the army, but we had the PT business going, so it just didn't work out. The timing wasn't right, but I wanted it for the experience, and being able to go away and things like that. So you went on a couple of deployments. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that sort of, how did that affect you? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it?
Yeah.
What was your experience like?
It was a bittersweet experience. During the time being on deployment, there's a lot of stuff that you just hate. And we had a sergeant that was just an absolute wanker, just a shit fight, and he hated me for whatever reason. So my life was a living hell for a lot of that time, because when you're on deployment, you're at work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's nothing that you can. They give you, there's time that you have off, but at any minute of any day, you can just be told you need to do this. So it could be 3 a.m. and you're asleep, and someone that outranks you can come in and tap you on the shoulder and say, you got to go and do this, and you just got to go and do it. So it was very full on. It was very testing. I think one word that always pops into mind when people say, what did you get out of the army? I think is tolerance. Tolerance is something that I got out of the army. But at the same time, when I reflect back on my time in the army, and when I catch up with my mates and we talk about and reminisce and laugh, those times on deployment are some of the most fond memories that we had, because you get to see parts of the world that you would never normally see, and you get experience to cultures in a very unique way, and you're there in a, you're not on a holiday, you're over there working with the army, so you see the country in a really different light. So going to East Timor, I was told, and I believe it from what I saw, I was told that East Timor is the third poorest country in the world. And man, you can really see it, when you see poverty like that, it really opens your eyes up, and it makes you, for me, it made me really value what I had and value what I came back to in Australia. So that was a really positive experience. And then when I went to Papua New Guinea, we went on a training exercise in Papua New Guinea. So we were there for 2 weeks and we trained with the PNG Army. And that was amazing because they trained us on jungle survival. So we learned how to make traps for animals and how to build shelter and how to survive in the jungle. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So there was some really cool stuff that we did.
Cool. Awesome. All right, let's fast forward now. You've come out of the army. We're back. We're both working in Fitness First and raising, I guess, capital and building a business to prepare to transition back into our own facility. Let's talk about that journey now. For me, honestly, it feels like yesterday. We've just signed our next 5-year lease for the next 5 years here in this location, which is a huge deal. And honestly, when I think about it, the last 5 years has gone by in a blur. I remember chunks, it's like phases we went through and had to get through to get to where we are now. My observation, but having worked with you and Richie now coming out of the army, is that the one thing I know for a fact about business is that you need grit. You need a lot of grit to be able to handle what we're going through and things like that. The army seems to have definitely taught that to you guys, because we've had personal trainers come and go, but the three of us still stand, and there's something that you and Richie both have in fucking droves, is grit. Is that something that you think you value and something you might have got out of the army that you've brought into our transition into business?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think for me it goes back further than that, because there's guys that drop out of the army and there's guys that couldn't handle the kind of stuff that Richard and I went through. And I think that for me it started with Kung Fu. Kung Fu really teaches you grit. You have to just do the same thing over and over again, and you have to push through some serious pain and discomfort when you're doing, with the amount of training and the stuff that we used to do. But then going into the army, it just took it to a whole nother level. So absolutely, the grit that I learned in the army I believe is a massive factor in our success and our ability to still be here after 5 years.
Yeah, awesome. And one of the things that we when we speak to people who know a bit about business and marketing and things like that, one of the things that we're reminded of a lot is that one of the grind has been created by us essentially rebranding ourselves over and over again. We've gone through transitions of being traditional strength coaches, very, very, very scientific about what we do, and it's been a reflection, this evolution of what our gym looks like, the space here. Kalisha, can you do a pan of the gym and what it looks like now? This is very different, essentially it used to be filled with equipment. There was bench presses here and there and hamstring curls and machines and all sorts of stuff. And now when you look around, it's a lot of open space, and we've really diverted back to our roots of how we used to train more when we were younger. Let's talk about that transition, and I guess the birth of what we now call or refer to as the Foundation Movement System, FMS, because a lot of this was heavily influenced by, I just knocked my mic over, fail, by, this journey, our journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we opened Unity Gym, compared to where we are now, is just like night and day, isn't it? It's we opened, just doing normal gym memberships, and the personal training and the group training was something on the side. So and that obviously it just didn't work for us. It wasn't something that people really wanted, and our biggest problem was that we weren't teaching people anything that made them want to sort of stay on long term with us. So we moved on. Well, we had the powerlifting culture here for a little while when we were supporting our friends Bass and Cam, and that was something that really affected our culture in a negative way. And I absolutely love Bass and Cam. They're great guys. I've always got a big spot in my heart for them, but it was just a real culture clash. And it didn't allow us to grow. So when we supported them to move out and to open their own gym down the road, Base Gym, I think that's when the real change sort of started to happen for us, because we were able to really do things the way that we wanted to do them. And it just never sat right in my heart doing this scientific approach to training, which I should clarify on that. It's not like we don't follow the science of training now, but it was, just these really boring programs that followed all of the research, and this is the best way to train if you want to get muscle hypertrophy or fat loss or whatever. But it just wasn't teaching anybody a progressive development of skill, which for me was totally uninspiring. I just didn't care about it at all. And it wasn't until we made the birth of the Foundation Movement System that I feel that we started to come into our own, and we started to attract a tribe of people that really believed in what we were doing, and we all started to see some great results.
Yeah, absolutely. Science is critical to getting an understanding of how movement and exercise the body works and everything, and it plays a major role. But the problem with science is, and it's funny, I read an article recently by Charles Poliquin, who we don't really follow that much anymore, except for our conditioning movements and our conditioning programs. We utilise what we've learnt there. But he sort of said it's nice when science catches up to you, because they've got to be so by the book, and they've got to make sure that they've got enough evidence before they speak out publicly about a certain subject, that often it can feel like the scientific literature comes in 10 or 15 years behind, Like we've known about intermittent fasting for many, many years. This is just a case in point example. But only now they're starting to validate it, and people have been fasting for thousands of years, and people have been using intermittent fasting to enhance health and sell autophagy for 10 or 15 years, but it hasn't been mainstreamed. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and that's also happening in the movement side of things, which is sort of something, I guess, that's influenced our program, like incorporating calisthenics and gymnastics. But I'd like you to touch specifically on the motivating factor, because I saw a really good post. Did you watch the video from Kerwin the other day where he was talking about, there's something about learning calisthenics, like you put so much into it, and you only get such a little bit out, and there's something really rewarding about that. It triggers this intrinsic motivator that sort of ignites people's passion. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's the easy come, easy go thing. So, everybody's heard of that before, easy come, easy go. And what it means is, anything that comes in life easily goes just as easily. And the only things that are really valuable, that are going to stay around for stand the test of time, are the things that you have to work for and that you have to put your work into, and you can just relate it to like building a house. If you were to get a few little pieces of straw and a couple of sticks and bind it all together and hope that it's going to protect you from the elements, it's just going to blow away with the first strong wind. But you spend that 6 months to a year working with people to build a proper house, and that's going to last you a lifetime. So the same thing happens with training. If I believe that when you come into the gym just motivated purely to look better or to lose fat or to gain muscle, in all honesty, if you do the work that's required, those results come really, really quickly. It's not that hard to lose 10 or 20 kilos of fat. If genetics are on your side, so if you're 97% of the population, because there literally is only about 2 or 3% of the population that are genetically hindered when it comes to fat loss. But if you do the work, if you really make the change, in 6 months you can be a completely different person. And I consider that a pretty short time in training. Whereas when you do something like calisthenics or gymnastics or movement training, it's a real journey. And the things that, just doing a handstand, like I just can't believe how long it's taken us to learn how to be able to do handstands with the amount of training that I've done in the past. And when I spoke to other people that told me they did it in a year, I don't know, maybe they were specializing in a handstand and that's all they were doing. But for us to do it as just a part of our training, it's taken so much longer than that. But that journey is now so rewarding, now that we can do 30-second holds and things like that. So I think that's one of the things that motivates people. I think there's some people that aren't willing to put the work in, and they want quick results, and we're definitely not for them. But those people,
calisthenics and gymnastics is definitely not for them.
No, it's not. But then there's people out there who have been training for 5 or 10 years even, and they're starting to look at their whole practice as being a little bit empty. They're not achieving anything that they're really happy with now, and they want to take it to that next level. And for people like that, for people that are willing to put the time in and learn some stuff that they've never been able to do before, I think calisthenics and gymnastics is a really, really rewarding journey.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I want to talk about so much more, and we could go so deep into this just one topic with our podcast going forward. But let's talk more now about your specific journey with this stuff, because you used to be like, when we first opened Unity, anyone who was here would remember the famous rooster walk up and down the middle of the gym. Like you were like doing this thing with your kung fu, and that was it. And since then you've transitioned, and we're doing gymnastics, calisthenics, but recently even you've sort of taken a step back almost to relay some foundations. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, you sort of hit a bit of a wall, a glass ceiling with the calisthenics, mm-hmm. and now I notice you're doing a lot more strength and conditioning again. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I'll start with when we started. So, I got out of the army and we started Unity Gym, and I was really evaluating what I wanted to get out of my life with my training. And I even had a moment, maybe for a couple of weeks, where I started to question whether or not I could be bothered putting in the hours and hours and hours of work that's required every day to take my training to the next level. But I decided that I did want to. I wasn't ready to give up on my dreams yet, and I was only 35, so I was very young still in the scheme of things. And so I recommitted to Kung Fu, and as you remember, I was training for about 2 or 3 hours a day. And when you do Kung Fu training, if you do good Kung Fu training that's going to deliver any great results, there's a lot of repetition. And so that rooster walk I was doing 20 minutes every day up and down the AstroTurf strip. And but I just had a look at the people that were coming into our gym, and to be honest, no one really gave a shit about Kung Fu. And I think MMA was the death of traditional martial arts. So
and boxing.
Boxing. Yeah. It's everybody wants to do MMA now or jiu-jitsu. So I just had a real think, and I thought, do I really want to be putting so much energy into something that I love so much, but that's never really going to benefit our business, when our business requires so much of my energy? Like, what do I want in life? Do I want 2 things that I put half-assed efforts into and get half-assed results? Or do I want to really find something that I can blend business and pleasure and hobby together? And it was just that's when I got introduced to gymnastics bodies. It was Ben and Drew Ben and Drew Slater that told me about it, and so I had a look into that, and I started the online course. And then you told me that I'd been doing it for maybe 6 months or a year, and you told me that you had a ticket to go and work with Ido Portal at his workshop. I'll never forget the conversation, because you said, "Oh, you're getting more into gymnastics and stuff than I am now. Maybe you should go and do this." And so I went along to that, not knowing who Ido was and what he looked like. And I was made a bit of a fool when, at the very start of the workshop, he got everyone in the room. He went around the room and he got everyone to speak about themselves. And it came to me, and I said, "Oh, I've been doing martial arts for 15 years, and I own a gym, and I just started doing gymnastics. And I just came here to learn more about gymnastics." And he kind of shook his head and said, "This isn't gymnastics, bro." And anyway, that workshop opened my eyes like nothing else ever has. That was one of the most amazing awakening experiences for me. I went in there thinking that I was maybe a little bit more shit hot than I was, and I walked out of there feeling like a speck on the wall, man. What the people in that workshop could do, and what Ido and Odelia could do, just blew my mind. And I came out of there. I went in there thinking that I needed to be one thing or another. So I thought, okay, I'm not a martial artist anymore. Now I'm a gymnast. And that's what I do. I do gymnastics, so I'm a gymnast. But I walked out of there. Ido just stripped down this specialization mentality, which is that you have to be a specialist in something. And he calls himself a generalist. And I came out thinking, well, I don't need to be anything. I can do some gymnastics, and I can do some martial arts, and I can do some weightlifting. And that, for me, was the birth of the Foundation Movement System. That's when I came back to you and spoke to you about how we could, potentially create a system of training that drew on our strengths, on your strength and experience with weightlifting, and my strength and experience with martial arts and my limited experience with gymnastics at the time, and we could create something that would be, really cool.
Awesome. The concept of being a generalist and a specialist is something that people probably don't understand. Just quickly, explain that.
Yeah, look, I believe that the majority of people that do some form of training are specialists, because people go to yoga, and they're a yogi, or they go to Pilates and they do Pilates, or they go to the gym and they do weightlifting, or they do gymnastics, or whatever it is. And when you're a specialist, you reject all other forms of training, because you believe that what you do is the most effective way of training. And also, if you're a specialist like I was with martial arts, you just don't have the time, because you're told by your teachers that you need to train for 2, 3, 4 or 5 hours a day to get better at your specialization, and there's just no time for anything else when you're a specialist. Whereas when you're a generalist, you don't do that. When you're a generalist, you look at movement as a whole, and you draw on anything that you can do that is going to benefit you, and you reject things that you feel are a waste of your time. And you become a generalist.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great awareness, a great understanding, and this is something that I have had to battle with a lot, and we can talk about that.
We all have. It was one of the hardest things for me, because I was struck with the dogma of being a martial artist, and it was a very strong dogma, because my kung fu teacher had told me for 15 years, and it wasn't like he was whipping me with a cane or anything. He would just shrug his shoulders and say, "Rad, if you want to get better at kung fu, you can't do this other stuff because you don't have time for it, and you have to do this, this, and this." So I had this dogma, of believing that I needed to do things a certain way, and so that's why I never did weightlifting or anything like that, because I just believed that it was going to take me away from doing kung fu. And it was the hardest thing that I ever went through, to get rid of that dogma of being a specialist and accept that the way forward was to not be a specialist martial artist anymore, but to adopt things that I'd never ever done before, because that was the greatest room for growth for me. The greatest room for growth was not doing my rooster walk for 20 minutes every day anymore. It was in doing something that I'd never done before for 20 minutes every day.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we're in Unity. We've created this awesome, what we believe to be the better way to train, which, and I want to explain that quickly. I'll go there. Because people have, obviously it's a big statement, the better way to train. Better way to train for us means balance, right?
Yeah.
It means balance, like balance between strength training and mobility, and balance between formal training and informal training, like doing your regular gym workout and doing something that uses your body in a completely new way that's going to stimulate neural brain plasticity. That skill component, and that's where the Cali, the gymnastics, the flow, the locomotion comes into it, right?
Yeah.
So the better way to train, in our opinion, is having that balance. Is there anything you can add to that? Because we've been called out before by people, mostly the CrossFit community, about claiming that it's the better way to train. And of course the better way to train has to be specific. If you want to be a power lifter, it's not the better way to train for you.
Yeah. Look, the first thing I'll say is that I don't think that what we do is the best way to train at all. I don't think that anyone can say that what they do is the best way to train, because I love something that you told me ages ago when I got out of the army, and I was asking, maybe it was either you or Tony Battaji, but it came from the same sort of school of thought, where I was asking, what's the best program for me to do to get this result? And your answer was the program that you haven't done. That's the best program for you to do. So that's the idea of periodization, that you keep changing things and you keep moving through different things. But what I think the better way to train is finding your weaknesses and turning them into strengths. And that's what we do with the Foundation Movement System. We identify weak links in the kinetic chain. So for most people that come here, they have very poor mobility, and mobility is a really key thing that we need to work on. Then the next thing these are the most people that come into Unity Gym. They have a very poor understanding of basic strength and conditioning, and just how to use basic strength movements. And then they have poor body awareness, where they just can't control their body to do really basic calisthenics or body weights type movements, just to be able to engage muscles in kinetic chains in the right way to create a movement. And so then everybody works on those weak links, and as we strengthen those weak links up, they start to become more capable of more advanced things. And you asked me before about, why have I made this move back to doing some more weightlifting recently? Because for me, I'm always analysing what I do, and I analyse what I do in our program blocks of 1 month times, but then I also analyse what I've achieved in a 6 month block, And when I look at my most recent, the last 6 months, the thing I can see in myself that I'm suffering from the most, what's causing me to plateau, is a lack of just raw strength. It's something that you did right through your 20s, and that Richard did, that I never did. I never did a whole lot of weightlifting. And so as I get further and further down this calisthenics and gymnastics journey, I realize that one of the things that I'm missing more than anything else is just raw strength. So that's a self-reflection on what I need, and we do that with our members all the time. We're always just looking at them. What are you missing as an individual? And at the baseline level for most people, it's just raw strength and mobility. But then as they get better, we start getting into more of the fun stuff, like the skills around handstands and muscle ups and other ring work and movement skills, with basic acrobatics and elements from dance, like our spinal manipulation and stuff. And it's a really fun journey. It's a fun journey of discovery for people, where they start to learn things and be able to do things that they never could before. And it's never ending. You never when you find the better way to train, there's always somewhere to go. You never ever master it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. We recently, and it's quite recent, we split the group, and we have our foundations group, and we have our progressions group classes. Now, the difference between those two programs, if you stand back and watch, is that the foundations group, they tend to do a lot more body composition training and a lot more basic weightlifting. I think it's important that we sort of discuss to a level why we're doing that, and what, like, the whole idea of setting a base level strength and conditioning in people's bodies, and also not just the strength and conditioning component, the nutrition, the understanding of basic foundation nutrition principles, body composition principles, because let's be real, calisthenics and gymnastics require you moving your body weight. And if you're 40 kilos or 30 kilos or even 20 kilos, even 10 kilos overweight, those sorts of movements are going to be very hard for people, right? Unobtainable in most cases. You did a really good example in one of our last workshops that we did, where you got some of the guys who'd lost 10 or 15 or 20 kilos to strap that weight back on their body and try and attempt pull-ups. And these guys could both do multiple pull-ups in a set, and all of a sudden they couldn't when they had that body. Let's let the people know why we do these foundations classes and where that came about.
Yeah, look, that's a really good one. And I think before we do that, we have to talk about the progressions classes and where we started with that. So, we've got these classes where we're teaching people more intermediate to advanced mobility. The weightlifting, we start people off still at a very basic level, but then progress them up to more intermediate and advanced weightlifting movements. And then, of course, the inclusion of gymnastics and calisthenics training. And we just found that there were certain members that were training with us that it wasn't the better way to train for them. For those individuals that are trying to recover from injuries, or for people that are like in their 40s and 50s that are completely deconditioned to training, that have never been in a gym before and have decided to come here, working on gymnastics and calisthenics and more advanced mobility and things like trying to develop handstands, that was just not the better way to train for them at all. It was far from the better way to train for them. So we decided that we were going to create a class called Foundations, which was designed to accommodate people just like that. So it's a class where we work on the foundations of movement, so exercises that are going to strengthen the joints unilaterally to prevent injury, also to rehabilitate injuries for people that have got old injuries that are coming to the gym, and that's one of their number one goals. And also the further and further that we went with our evolution of the progressions class, the further and further it went away from a class that helps with fat loss and with building body composition, and the more it went into, training people for skill and for movement. So the foundations class, we really made sure that we included the right combination of weightlifting that was going to condition their bodies and their joints to prevent injury and make sure that they wouldn't injure themselves when they were doing the more advanced stuff in the progressions class, but also with a major focus on body composition so that people would lose fat and get into their desired body composition before they start moving into those advanced classes.
Yeah, and that is super important, because when you think about it, I mean, I obviously can't make a blanket statement about everybody, but what I do know for a fact is that just about every person I know that's really good at calisthenics or gymnastics, like Ido, like Azar, people like that, they all started with a base level of strength. They worked out in a gym, they strengthened their bodies, they had a decent level of base raw foundation strength before they started going inverted, before they started doing stuff like that, and I think most people probably do. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that start with calisthenics, but calisthenics and movements like that, they have a lot of conditioning. They do a lot of base raw conditioning before they're upside down and before they're achieving the big milestones like the flags, the levers, the handstands, the muscle ups, things like that, So, but we only see the end result when we look at YouTube and things like that. We see these guys doing amazing stuff and we all want that end result, but we don't usually understand that there's a whole process of progression to get there,
Yeah, absolutely. And you just never know what someone's gone through when you just look at some of their videos online, and everyone's running their own race. So you've got some people that just take to anything like a fish to water. There's those freaks out there that just get on a chin-up bar down at Bondi Beach, and 6 months later they're doing muscle ups and for multiple reps and one-arm pull-ups and all this crazy stuff. But you don't know what they've done in the past, and you don't know if their body was just really took to that really, really well. And
what I do know is that they're grinding day in, day out, though, to get themselves.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, they work hard for it. Yeah, and you also don't know what kind of injuries they're sustaining along the way, because there's a lot of injuries that goes on in any kind of gym activity. So what we do at Unity Gym, we try and mitigate that as much as we can, and we try and really help people to guide them through this journey without getting injured, and that's why we do those foundations classes.
Yeah, well, you kind of have to do that. You got your hands tied behind your back as a personal trainer, because the worst thing you can do is injure someone.
Yeah.
And so yes, in an ideal world, we throw people under the bar, and some trainers do that, but once you really hurt someone in the gym, you tend to not want to do it ever again.
Yeah.
We've been trainers now for 16 years. We've seen the good and the bad of training and probably done a bit of both ourselves. I certainly have beat myself up quite a lot, and you know that you have to hold me back. Okay, let's wrap this up. I want to go through your 10 commandments. What are the 10 things that you can think of, the first 10 things that come to mind that you think are critical that people get right to enhance their health, their movement, everything?
Well, I'm not going to say 10 things because you didn't give me a minute to even think about that, so I'll just say whatever comes to mind. I think that one of the first thing that pops to mind that people need to think about is their diet and their nutrition and the kinds of things that we're putting in our bodies. And you only need to look around at the collective state of human health in the Western world to see that we're getting this wrong. We're fucking it up big time. And when people like you and me go to social events and we get told by people that we're too skinny, that really makes me raise an eyebrow, because we get our DEXA scans done, and we're all around 10% body fat, which is definitely not too skinny. It's really healthy for a man. So I think you really need to look at what you're eating first and cut out the shit and eat a whole food diet, and we could go right into that.
We'll save that for another blog and podcast.
Yeah. Number 2 is I think you need to have a look at the toxins that you're putting in your body. So what kind of drugs and alcohol are you taking? And being really honest with yourself, because coming from someone in my 20s who had a real problem with that stuff, I can tell you just how bad it is for you and how horrendous it is for your body. And, the more and more I even move away from just drinking alcohol socially, having like 1 or 2 drinks and feeling what that does to me now that I live so much of a cleaner life. I go through these phases where I just don't touch a drop of alcohol for a month or two, and I just feel so much better from it. So yeah, you need to look at the toxins that you're doing, that you're consuming. Number 3, definitely your rest and recovery. What are you doing to make sure that your body is recovering properly? Are you getting enough sleep at night? And then if we move into the training things, you need to develop consistency and discipline. You need to be consistent. You need to be dedicated, and then you need to choose the right type of training. You need to find a good teacher, I'd say, is a really big one. Make sure that you search out for someone that knows much more than you and has a lot to that can teach you, and do what they say. Learn from them.
Listen.
Yeah, listen. Yeah, don't try and reinvent the wheel. You're going to them for a reason, and they've learnt. They've got hopefully decades of experience over you, and you need to listen and learn from them, and then just be patient. Just be patient with the journey. Turn up, do the work, understand that it's not going to be a straight line to success. You're going to go through some speed humps, and you need to be patient, consistent, and dedicated.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that was like 6 or maybe 7, but that'll definitely do. Okay, that was epic, man. That was really, really cool. We're on 46 minutes. We wanted to try and keep this to about 45 minutes, so we'll wrap it up now. You guys can comment, ask Rad more questions if you want, anything about his journey. We are going to be interviewing, we got a great interview in store for tomorrow. We're interviewing Brett from Dry July. He is the founder of Dry July. I'm doing Dry July right now. I haven't had a drop of booze. I know that Rad can't say the same thing because I saw him drinking champagne on the weekend.
I did not have a drop of champagne on the weekend, mate. That was the girls.
Oh, really?
That was not me, mate.
So you on Dry July?
No, I have had a beer.
But yeah, there you go. There you go.
But I didn't drink champagne on the weekend.
All right. So tomorrow, I think it's happening at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We will go live again, and we're going to shoot and film Brett's interview. We're also recording for the podcast. This will be edited into the Unity Gym podcast. We still don't have a name for the Unity Gym podcast, so guys, hit us up. Think of a cool name, something that's almost as cool as Rob Nash's Unity TV or Unity V.
Unity V. Yeah, that's
that we've got. And in the meantime, let's do this, man. 2018, let's make it a good year for health and fitness and crush your life goals. If you need any help, get down here to Unity Gym. We will take good care of you. We have a great tribe and an even greater program. Thanks very much, Rad. That was awesome, and it was nice to dust the cobwebs off and get a practice run before we make a fool of ourselves in front of anyone else on a professional level with the podcast. Final word.
Get into it, guys. Just get started. Find someone that knows more than you and get started. And cut the bullshit. Be honest with yourself. Have a look at what you're doing, and don't make excuses. Excuses, you can only have reasons or results, and only results don't lie.
All right, awesome. Signing off. Thank you very much for your time, guys. We love you all. Anyone who watches this, I love you even more. Thanks very much.